Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about Grand Arena Omicrons, and in particular, we're going to be looking at the characters with multiple Omicrons. Which of these characters Omicron should you equip? Which ones do you skip? Do you need all of them? Do you only need one, two, or none? And again, focusing only on Grand Arena and the characters with multiple Omicrons. So we're not covering things like Traya, Kersantin, Zori, Night Trooper, Marin, things like that. We're only looking at the characters with multiple Grand Arena Omicrons. And the reason I say this is because I found that a lot of players have much greater struggles determining how many to equip on a character. And it's something that I was getting asked and I'm like, oh man, I don't really know. And so I kind of tried to go through this and think about the characters I use and which Omicrons make the most sense, which ones don't, and think holistically. One aspect of this that I feel we sometimes overlook is, hey, maybe right now you have 3 Omicrons, but next month you're unlocking Ezra, and the month after that you're going to get Rey, and the month after that you're going to get Malicos and Starkiller and Reva. And all of a sudden you start doing the math and realizing you're not going to have enough Omicrons to equip every single ability on those characters. And if you go with all of them on a character who maybe doesn't need them, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot. So we're going to get into this list. Please like and subscribe. Let's give a shout to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. Of course, it doesn't want to pull up. Why the hell? These damn graphics never want to show up. There we go. Thank you guys again for the support. I really appreciate you guys. You all are my community is the best. You guys are the best, hands down. I can't thank you enough for being part of the Fat family. Your support truthfully means everything to me. I love hearing that I'm helping you guys. I love seeing your accounts grow. It's what makes being a creator. That's the return I've really enjoyed. So thank you guys again. Let's get in here. Let's talk about some Grand Arena Omicrons. All right, so the first category we're going to cover is the characters who don't need Omicrons. And starting off with Dr. Aphra. Now, there is some bias here. And that's because her Omicrons are only in 5v5. And for me, this is just a no. I'm a yield guy. I'm a return guy. I don't like to invest in something that is only going to be available in 5v5 or 3v3. I don't want a raid Omicron that's going to disappear once that raid sunsets. That's not the kind of thing that I want to invest in. I'd rather invest in something permanent that's going to stick around that I can use whenever I want it, and I can't do that with Dr. Aphra's Omicrons. Now, what I will say with her, she does not need the Omicrons to kill the teams that she kills. The one exception I would make is that without the top tier Datacrons, with the turn meter and droid stuff or her own, killing Jabba can be much more challenging without bare minimum her leadership, but the other ones as well. It can be a lot harder to pull those off. However, if I'm honest, I don't know that you need Aphra to kill Jabba, right? There's some other things you can do to kill Jabba and some other teams that Aphra will beat that are still very good. And for not investing in Omicrons on her, I get a lot of use. So I don't think she needs them. I think you're good enough kind of skipping those and waiting just for the good Datacrons to eventually try to kill, whether it's, Galactic Legends and stuff. The good Omicrons is what I'd be waiting for there, to be honest. All right, the next grouping of characters, I've got Bo, Jar Jar, and Malgus. And you just need to hear me out. We will be talking about the Omicrons that you do want on these characters. But if I'm being brutally honest, I don't know that you need any of their Omicrons. Not that they aren't good teams, but there's still a lot of the teams that they will beat with or without their Omicron. It's not as important. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with these characters without their Omicrons that still provides a lot of value for your account. Having the Omicrons will open up additional counters, will make them tougher to beat defensively, or allow you to punch up and do some greater things. One of the things I would say is that a regular First Order team 1000% could potentially struggle against Darth Malgus. I'm not exaggerating when I say a standard a regular First Order team without Darkseid Rey will very much struggle against Darth Malgus. I have seen Darth Malgus beat that team for pretty decent banners even. So understand that, with those, he can do some things defensively or offensively that just turn him into a much greater team. But even without his Omicrons, he can still beat teams like Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. He'll still beat Great Mothers. Even in Territory Wars with a Dark Mother Datacron, Omicron, he can still beat that team. Bo-Katan beats Lord Vader without her Omicrons. I do it in Territory Wars. Do the Omicrons make that fight easier? Absolutely. And she can do some other things in Grand Arena because of her Omicrons, but don't really need them. Same thing with Jar Jar. Jar Jar is one that's tough because I am not the biggest Gungan fan, because I think a lot of the teams they counter aren't really reliant on the Omicrons. It's more so just reliant on the shield generator. But I think when they have their Datacron, or when they've got some good level 6s for them or some level 3s, having the Omicrons can make a difference for some of the counters that are not Darth Traya, right? But those are 3 that I'd say. I'm not saying you don't want their Omicrons. We'll talk about the ones you do. Again, I'm spending a lot of time here because I'm going to catch heat for this, and I want you to keep watching. Recognize that I'm saying if you got Bo, Malgus, Starkiller, Jar Jar, and call it like Ben Solo, I would be equipping Omicrons on Ben Solo and Starkiller before I'm equipping these ones. That's kind of how this hierarchy works. This is not saying you get Bo, you shouldn't equip Omicrons. This is you have a decision to make between Bo and X. I'm probably choosing X. That's my, logic. So what about this single Omicrons? Again, AdRad's just a placeholder here. So with Reva and Balen, I'm going to argue you just want their leaderships. I don't know that you need either of their unique abilities or their specials in order to beat what they do, to do what they do. Obviously, adding more Omicrons will make them better, but I have Reva's unique. And the thing here, it sounds really nice. When she's revived from Hatred, the cooldown of a Yielding Onslaught is refreshed. She gains 100% offense until her next attack and ignores taunt effects for 1 turn. Here's the thing, I'm not going to lie. Most of the time when Reva dies, the rest of my Inquisitors have already fallen apart, and so the battle's kind of already over. Not that this hasn't come in handy maybe once or twice, but I'd say I wish I could take this Omicron back, right? And honestly, I almost wonder if this one's better. I don't know. I think she just needs her leadership to really pose the threat that you want, right? That's the death mark, everything else. Balen, I do not have his unique. I have his special. I don't know that you need the special to do what he does. I feel like this is a really good team. Now, he has had some Datacrons to help boost his ability, so we might see that this becomes more and more important with that armor shred, but I think there's some aspects here that you might not need this, and the leadership is good enough for him to do what he does in Grand Arena. So it's just what I'm seeing. Next, we've got Luthen and Jar Jar, and here I'm going to argue you only want the uniques. Right, I've got this unique ability here. Again, this is your health, mastery, speed, and bonus protection. I don't have his basic. I don't have his special here. And this team still does really good things for me in Grand Arena. Still one of my better sleeper teams, particularly in 3v3 GAC. Now, they have had Datacrons lately to help them out, but it's still something that I've really enjoyed using. And then with Jar Jar, I'm going to argue it's the Mui Mui I love you. Mui Mui I love you. God, that's awful. This is the one I would go with. I think the extra stacks of the shield generator, the mastery gains are important. I don't have the first unique, right? I just have never found that I need this, to be honest. Maybe if you're trying to kill GLs or something, but I don't feel I need it. And same thing here. I think this is really nice. Just not something that I have felt has made a huge difference for my Gungans defensively, and I don't really use them on offense right now. I might be bringing them on offense here, but it's not something I'm like, wow, that's game-changing. And then Starkiller here, and this is a tough one because this really, we're going to talk about him later, but you really just need the unique. The unique is what makes Starkiller tick. His other 2 Omicrons can be very useful, and that's why I say it depends on your usage, but just for Starkiller to be Starkiller, the unique here is what you need to get rolling. Right, this is what drives that team forward. This is what's going to get you competing against those top tier teams. That's what makes him the threat. These ones are always going to be after the unique, but we'll kind of talk about that and, understand. We'll talk about that later. With him, just know it's the unique. So now we move on to the 2-omicron characters. So for here, we've got Bo-Katan and Malgus, where again, I had them above. As I said, I don't think you need either one to get good use. But if you want great use out of these characters, get their lead and get their unique. Those, in my opinion, are the best two abilities where they're gaining some mastery and extra bonuses. Bo-Katan's special, I just have never found I need this ability, to be perfectly honest. Not that I don't think it could be useful, but I don't think it's necessary. And with Malgus, I have all of his, and I wish I could take this one back. It's fine. I just don't know that I think I got good use out of this at a point in time. I think now with the way Grand Arena has progressed, I don't know that this is as important as it once was, right? It can still be very good. I just think there's probably better Omicrons to equip out there. And this is, again, going off of you unlocking a bunch of characters at once who need Omicrons. I'd probably avoid that one. But I definitely think you want both his unique and the leadership, because those are extremely important abilities for him. Ben Solo's next. This should be pretty easy. You need Force Dyad, right? This unique is what keeps him, turns him into the, hey, gotta get Ben and Rey below their thresholds. He's gonna keep coming back. But you also want Obscured. And the reason you want Obscured is for one purpose and one purpose only. The 4-turn healing immunity, which can't be copied, dispelled, evaded, or resisted. That is the biggest part of this ability. If you don't have this, it opens up a whole other array of counters to beat Rey, to beat Ben Solo. It really, without this Omicron, you are going to open up a whole can of worms that you don't want opened up against your Rey, right? This is just an insanely important Omicron. We will talk about Redeemed later. Right now, we just don't need to worry about it. We'll talk about that in a second we'll talk about that later on, ignoring protection. Next, we've got Queen Amidala here, and I'm going to argue that you want the unique, right? Which has all the good bonuses here. All the good bonuses are in the unique. The damage, mastery, immune to fear and healing immunity, all this stuff, right? That's all in the unique. And then special 1, which this attack ignores enemy protection. You gain critical damage up. You can have their cooldowns increased, right? There's just a ton of stuff on here that makes this ability so good that I think by utilizing this, it does stop some of those, I don't want to call it off meta, because it's not really off meta, but a counter like Inquisitors can get messed up by this ability, right? A counter like even Darth Bane at times could get messed up by this if you're increasing his cooldowns and he can't use his specials. I think we can skip the leadership. We'll talk about that, but I think you really want unique and special 1. Leadership we'll talk about here in a sec. And then Bane. In my opinion, Bane wants 2. Obviously the unique. Duh. Right? The unique is hey, this is everything. The extra mastery and max health and protection and all these extra bonuses. You need this. I'd also argue you want Essence of Dominance. You want the special 2. This is enemy cooldowns increased to 2. Remove 50% turn meter from all enemies, and Sith allies gain 50% turn meter. Reduce all enemies' defense by 20%. Stacking. Tenacity 2, but the defense is the bigger thing there. Is really, really important for Bane, particularly for getting big plays out early, particularly trying to go like back-to-back turns where you use this and then you use the swipe. It's really important that you can, lead off with these abilities and go the right way. This one, I just don't, unless you're going to be using him with Sith Eternal, I don't know that this is as necessary. Getting 5 stacks of Siphon can be super nice, and it has absolutely come in clutch for me at times. But there's other moments where I have not felt the need for this. This is probably an Omicron that I would say, as your count gets later and later, and you start looking at splitting hairs, that's maybe one where we look at putting that Omicron on, but I think for most players, unique and special too, and you're set to have a Bane that will last a very long time. So what about the characters who want them all? Finally, all of them. So we're going to start here with Darkseid, Ray, and Ezra, and this is really for two reasons. Number one, they are two of the more recent characters with Omicron abilities that are just insane. But they also go with galactic legends that make those galactic legends significantly better. Think of Ben Solo for a second. While he goes with Ray, that team, it doesn't change all of the counters to Ray. Starkiller can still be a Ray by adding Ben Solo. Gets a little bit more complicated, but it's still going to happen. Same thing with Malicos. Those characters can still counter Ray, whether Ben Solo is there or not. It just changes a little bit. These two completely change the way you beat those GLs. The more I looked through them, obviously there's like a, Darkseid Ray, you need the unique first, right? BDSM Ray needs the unique first. Probably both are uniques, to be honest. And then maybe the special. I'd say probably, I think it's this unique. It's tough. Like, that's the thing. I'm like splitting hairs where I'm like, I don't know which one. Both of them are good, right? I'd probably argue this one. I don't know. That's why I was like, I don't know which one. I'd just go with all of them. I feel like on a Galactic Legend team, you don't want to chintz out. Same thing with Ezra Bridger Exile. Like, even people will say, oh, well, this one's the weakest because, it's really just backup plan for Spectre allies. And if I'm not using with Spectre, why? Well, gaining 25 stacks of Purgle Migration is so important because that's how you lose Exile, right? You lose Exile by gaining 50 stacks of Purgle Migration, right? And he loses Exile. 50 stacks, he loses it. So the faster he can lose Exile, the better. You can exile an enemy, so that's important. Daring Advance. For each critical hit scored, deal 20% damage based on max health, which can't be evaded. Inflict buff immunity, healing immunity, offense down for 2 turns. And the cooldown's reduced by 1. He can now spam an ability, so you use this against a Starkiller. You use this against a Malicos. You use this against even Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. Reducing offense down for 2 turns, healing immunity, buff immunity. Those things are devastating. And the fact that they can't be dispelled makes it even worse, right? And then you've even got Exile itself. The first time a Spectre ally loses Exile, they gain 5% mastery per relic level on them. The first time they lose it, they gain an additional 30 speed. These bonuses persist through defeat. Now this, you could say, well, that sounds a little bit more like just only being good for Spectre teams. Think of this, though. This is the first time a Spectre ally. Ezra counts himself as an ally. Remember, it's not each other, right? When you see each other, you're not counting that character. This is counting him. So when he loses Exile, he's gaining 5 mastery per relic level, which at Relic 8 is 40% mastery. That's a big deal, right? That's a big, big deal. So we want to make sure that you are, taking advantage of that as best as you can, right? We really want to make sure that you're doing that. So, yeah. Then we've got Starkiller, Ben Solo, and Queen Amidala. And I said we'd talk about these characters. For Starkiller and Queen Amidala, for the sake of consistency, you'll probably want to eventually have all of their Omicrons. They are characters that as you get further in the game, as you're fighting better Ray teams with your Starkiller, as your Queen Amidala is fighting higher caliber teams, having all their Omicrons will allow them to be more consistent, whether offensively, defensively, or whatever else. Again, I think with Starkiller, especially because as you fight better Ray teams where there's more characters that can dodge, whether it's Baby Cal, JTR, and things, having this to be able to inflict healing immunity for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled. And again, this ability can't be evaded. And same thing with the Force Repulse, which is dispelling buffs on all enemies. The reason this one is important is dispel buffs on target, right? This attack deals 5% more damage for each buff. When he's unleashed, you deal 25% more damage for each buff dispelled instead. And then in Grand Arena, you can dispel buffs on all enemies. So if you're in 5v5 and you are unleashed and everybody has 2 buffs on them, without this Omicron, you're only dealing 50% more damage, right? Because you're only dispelling 2 buffs. But if the entire team has 2 buffs on them and you use this while unleashed, now you're dealing 250% damage. So pretty freaking good, right? And again, dispelling all buffs means if you're targeting Ezra and to dispel his taunt, you're also going to dispel crit hit immunity on everybody. It's very important to have that. And I think this one is the one a lot of players sleep on, but that healing immunity not being able to be dispelled allows you to counter those characters who dodge, right? Because you can put it on them, it can't be evaded, and you just spam it. Ben Solo, I went a long time without this Omicron, without being able to ignore protection. And what I began to notice was that my Ben Solo and Rey were still getting holds. So when I equipped this, I'd actually say that the hold rates went up. Now, if your Rey team is not getting holds consistently, I don't know that I would be clamoring for you to equip this Omicron. Which sounds silly, because you're going to say like, well, yeah, by equipping it, that team would get better. They 100% get better. But I'd argue you want your Rey team generating holds without this before I would equip it. Because if you're not generating holds, there's probably a modding issue or something else with your Rey team. You don't have the right team comp that equipping this will not make enough of a difference in most of your grand arenas. Again, I say most. In some, absolutely, but in most, probably not. Queen Amidala, again, with a leadership, I think this does become extremely important, particularly when you think about your attackers gaining offense up for 2 turns. Call another random ally to assist whenever they're using a special. Like, it just, that adds to the, how ridiculous this team can be. Protection up for supports. Gain protection up, 50% stacking, and speed up for 2 turns. So just think, if you're going up against that team and you look at Master Qui-Gon and you see that he's using specials and ramping that protection up and you're wondering why you're not doing damage, it's because that's stacking. So if you don't have AoE attacks on Qui-Gon, he's ramping that up for 3 turns. So he could have 150% protection up at one point, which is nuts. So yeah, it like that for consistency's sake. Malicos is the last one here. He does want all of his Omicrons, and that's just because they all kind of go together. And that's so tough to say, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh yeah, well, you want this one because that's the health and the mastery and, the crit immunity at the start of the battle that can't be dispelled, and, there's stuff there. But then you look here and it's, oh yeah, you've got your savior ability, you've got bonus turns, while Malicos, the gaining turn meter, like there's some really good things in here that without this, your Malicos team is far more susceptible to losing to Rey. Like this ability here is important because let's say Rey sudden whirlwinds you and targets your Malicos. He can eat that whirlwind, he'll gain damage immunity, gain a bonus turn, and then he'll heal himself up, gain a bonus turn, damage immunity, and go off. And then even with Die Whelp, with this one, the biggest part is that if your leader's a dark side or is an Ufu, Malicos gains 20% critical damage and offense stacking. So if you lead off with this ability, you're now juiced your offense and critical damage for the rest of battle. And that's where he really shines, is by boosting that offense and critical damage early. You can work around, pick off the characters you need to. The biggest problem with the Malicos, right? Like he needs all of them, which sucks. But he also needs Seer. You can't just get Malicos. You also kind of need Seer's Omicron as well. Because without Seer's Omicron, you're not getting as much survivability, immune to ability blocks and daze. It's just kind of, I don't know how to say it. It's kind of silly. That with, this Omicron really does play a big role. And you just keep reading through it. And it's like, holy crap, this is really, really good. And, I don't want to read the whole thing, but it just recognize that this Omicron makes that Malicos team able to pull off some of those counters. And if you're not beating some of those teams, it's because you probably don't have that Omicron. So a big difference between Malicos and Starkiller is that Starkiller with one Omicron can still consistently do well in Grand Arena. And not that Malicos couldn't do the same thing, but I'd guarantee that people are able to beat Rey with a single Omicron on Starkiller. I don't know that you're beating Rey with a single Omicron on Malicos and none on Seer. you need more. And that's kind of why I'm calling them out here a little bit, that you've got to think through this whole team. And then similar situation with Saw Gerrera and Luthen, where if you're going to want to use Luthen, I'd argue Saw is his better team than Mon Mothma, and Saw has an Omicron that you do want to equip. But I have seen players use him with Mon Mothma and get good results as well, so that's an option for you. But I at least wanted to make sure I called those out at the end of the video here. So those are my thoughts. Please like and subscribe. Comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. How do you think, does this list make sense for you, or do you think that you should, am I missing something major? I want to know what you guys think. Again, and I know that my arch nemesis Agnards will be the first one in the comments to instill hate. So thank you guys again. I love you all. May the force be with you, unless your name is Agnards, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, my friends.